I would like to welcome my Vice Chair, Ms. Kadria, as well as Rapporteur, Ms. Charumati, for the conference. With that, I'll be starting with the ROP session, followed by a roll call, and then we'll start with the procedures. So we'll be starting with the basic ROP session. So what's ROP? ROP stands for Rules of Procedure. It's what is expected of you as delegates. ROP makes up the heart and soul of any MUN conference, because it dictates the flow of debate as well as the flow of the conference. Basic things to know. How will the flow of the committee be? Number one, we'll be starting with the roll call. The roll call is nothing but an attendance where in which you're required to answer in either of two ways. Either you can answer as present or you can answer as present and voting. The key difference is that at the end of the conference, we'll be voting upon a document called as the DR or the draft resolution. If you have opted for present and voting, you will be obliged to either choose a side for or against. Rather, if you have opted for present during your roll call, you will have the option of choosing abstain at the time of voting. Moving on, after that, we'll be establishing quorum, that is the number of delegates required to pass any procedural or substantive voting. We'll come to that later point of time. After that, we'll be moving with a motion to begin formal session, and then we'll be moving on with the actual formal and informal sessions. MUNs are of two types. Inside an MUN conference, the committee time is divided into either a formal debate or an informal debate. Formal debate essentially it's an inexhaustive list, which means you can add your name again and again repeatedly to the list, and you can speak multiple number of times. Do note that if there is no name on the GSL, it means the committee does not have any business. We have discussed everything that ought to be discussed, and we are going to end the committee. So do ensure that the GSL keeps going on. There's also something called as the informal debate. That is something we break away from the formal debate, and that's of two types. You have the moderated caucus as well as the unmoderated caucus. What happens during moderated caucus is I'll be moderating and I'll be calling out names in a specific order, and all of you can discuss. So what's the key difference between a formal debate and an informal debate? Let's say in a moderated caucus, you can choose a specific agenda, a specific sub-agenda. In this present today's committee, we have 3 agendas. So maybe one of those sub-agendas may be one of your moderated caucus, up to the committee's discretion, that is. An unmoderated caucus is nothing but a recess, where which the executive board will be muting ourselves and will be only limited to observing role. We'll be observing what happens, and all of you are free to unmute and speak with each other, try to lobby, and try to make the best time out of it. Followed by GSL, the last part of the committee would be documentation, where in which all of you will be expected to submit a certain document called as the DR, before which it will be called as the working paper. The exact number I will be informing you all at a later point of time. Moving on to points, motions, and leads. Points. What are points? Let's suppose any of you talk points, you will have to raise your hands in the meeting. Nobody will be allowed to speak unrecognized. Allowed to speak. So what can you raise for? You can raise your hand for number 1, point of personal privilege. Let's suppose you're not able to hear the other person speaking or any other such glitches. You can raise a point of personal privilege. Let's suppose you want the other person to repeat what that other person had said earlier. That can be used. Next is the point of parliamentary inquiry. At any point of time during the conference, if any of you are, let's say, not able to understand what's happening in the conference, you can ask me by raising a point of parliamentary inquiry as to what's happening, and I'll get you up to speed. So any thing related to procedure or the happenings of the conference, it has to be a point of parliamentary inquiry. Next is a point of order and point of information. Point of order is a certain kind of point in which you're correcting a mistake an earlier delegate had made during their speech. Again, point of order is only allowed for factual inaccuracies. It's not allowed for fallacies. Factual inaccuracy is wherein which a certain delegate has told a certain fact which is wrong. Let's suppose that particular delegate has told India is the 11th largest country in the world, but according to facts, all of us know that India is the 7th largest country in the world. The same can be pointed out. Whereas logical fallacies cannot be brought into picture over here. Moving on to motions. Again, voting upon motion is of two types: order of precedence as well as order of disruption. What's order of disruption? We'll deal with that first. That motion which gives the maximum amount of time for any delegate to speak will be voted upon first. So a motion for, let's say, 20 minutes with 20 seconds be voted upon first as compared to another motion for 15 minutes, since it's allowing 5 more speakers to speak. And during order of disruption, unmoderated caucus will take the highest precedence. Order of precedence. In case all the motions are time period, the voting will happen according to the basis in which the people were recognized, the delegates were recognized. Moving on to yields. Yields again are of 4 types. Once a delegate has elapsed their time, stipulated time, they can yield their remaining time in 4 ways. Number 1, you can give back the time to the executive board. You can yield it to the EB. Number 2, you can yield your remaining time for questions. You can yield your remaining time for comments, or you can yield your remaining time for another delegate. The fourth option, the delegate to whom you're yielding your time must be made aware of, and the consent must have been received. Again, there's a specific verbatim which all of you are expected to follow. The same I'll be dropping it in the group as well. So you will be expected to. So you'll be expected to follow this particular verbatim. Please mute yourself. Delegates, please refrain from speaking unless recognized. Yes. The delegate of so-and-so country would like to suspend formal session and enter into a moderated or an unmoderated caucus for a total time period of so-and-so minute with individual speaker time of so-and-so minute to discuss so-and-so agenda. This has to be the verbatim which has to be strictly followed by all the delegates.